Yeah, good to see you guys again. Regarding this class, regarding this time of year, regarding the current process, regarding the landscape of college football, what an amazing experience we've just had. The transfer portal is something unlike I've ever experienced. Uh, I chose and we chose as a program to engage in that at a different level this year. Now that I've seen the national landscape and seeing our roster needs. And so that in and of itself is changing also, meaning that when the portal opens, which is a single portal time, basically the entire country is looking to fill their roster, meaning that in addition to the early signing date, which is predominantly high school players, then either through graduation or through players that have chosen to leave, etc., then there's whatever remaining needs there are. And interestingly, that number for us going into the portal was we calculated originally at 35 players. And so 35 players when the portal opened, knowing that our school started the Monday immediately following the opening of the portal. So that was 2 days later. 3 days actually, because it was Friday, if I remember right. So it was Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday the portal opened. And so then knowing that our time frame and the constraint that we were going to operate against, and this was all in advance, we'd basically looking to be filling those number of spots within basically a 2-week period, working hard with the institution and our university, which, wow, I'm so grateful. Utah State really worked hard in advance to help us the onboarding process and the transcript evaluation and the application process, and then professors working to allow our prospects in class, even if it was after the ad drop deadline and different things, as well as the possible safety net of the second 7-week session of school in the event that the processes didn't spin quite fast enough. And so institutionally, we felt very supported in that regard, also from our administration. So having said all that, then the work of assessing and selecting that number of players, 32 or 35, and that amount of time was an amazing challenge. Our staff worked extremely hard, and it was nonstop, literally visits of some sort every single day. 44 visits total to land 32 players, which right is roughly around the 70 through 72-ish% ratio. And so, man, that was a yield that was, I think, higher than it anticipated, maybe by national averages, et cetera. Our processes were streamlined, they were effective, they were efficient. Transparency ruled the day in terms of young people, basically in a 24-hour period, having to select if this is the right fit for them and vice versa. And I'll preface that for a second, meaning that the time period prior to the portal opening is supposed to be a non-contact period with prospects. And so here's the reality: to say that that's truly being enforced or upheld, no. And should it be? Probably not. Because with the amount of time when the portal opens to making your decisions, the thought that you then can assess the character, assess the academics, assess the need and the possible fit, to say that can happen that fast, really not realistic or effective. So I think there's basically been an adopted industry standard of what is relatively within the rules in the pre-portal non-contact contact period is what I would call it, and which is really a unique experience. So the national calendar certainly needs work. You've heard that many times before. That was no more clear to me. It was never clear to me more than the time period leading up to the portal after our bowl game. And that was by the way, noticing our own players being contacted, right? Which is not supposed to be legal. And yet, man, I would say that is industry standard currently. And so if you're not engaging, and this isn't justification, but really there's a standard of how much information can you get within the rules to then know and be ready when the portal opens to then be able to act quickly enough. And so that's been a very unique thing to manage. Again, this is now whatever year of the portal this is, and this is just my perspective coming off of it. Having said all that, really like our class addressing the needs. I think we address them timely. I think we address them effectively. I think we address them with character, meaning the right type of young people to fit our program. I think we addressed it with ability. And man, the amount of work, wow, in a short amount of time is unlike anything I've experienced in the recruiting world. In addition to that, right, then there is the today, which is the second signing date, which was and really predominantly for high school players or late junior college players. And so we're choosing to announce our portal players today also, but really the date is still for remaining high school players and junior college players that hadn't been signed. And so we've added 4 of those. And then I've intentionally held a number of spots even through spring. And that's just for the what ifs. And right after we see that our current roster needs, again, we have a new offensive coordinator. We'll assess all of our current roster again, and then I'm not talking about a significant number, but a handful at most, just to then possibly readdress or address whatever might need to happen after that. So again, institutionally, we were supported really, really well, personnel staff and the position coaches. And then quite frankly, I don't believe I talked to a single player that didn't have representation. And that's a significant shift. And the representation could be a certified agent. It could be an uncertified agent. It could be a family member or a third party in some way, shape, or form. I don't know of a single instance where we weren't dealing with someone else that was representing a young person. And so that would be another significant shift from a year ago to this year. Where will it go? I'm not sure. So I don't know where it goes next year. But I will say the values, meaning the portal values, continue to rise. And quite frankly, it's designed in a way where it's I guess you could call it a monopoly, where there is one place to go for basically the entire national scene of college football to get players at that time. And so that in essence affects the finances that, again, each institution is dealing with on their own. So back to the class, it's it's shown here, right? The number of players we've added, both through high school and 4 years players, and already the onboarding. And that means bringing these players here. The majority are here already, right? Already in workouts. And so there's a benefit to this portal window, meaning that our current roster development, our current culture building, our current teaching of the values of the program and the schematics can begin earlier. And so it gives you a great sense already, and earlier than maybe when there was 2 portal windows, which we never were really sure, adding roughly 30-ish players right through the second window. Then you had summer to do that. So the advantage of the 1 portal window certainly is bringing your team together. But I will say from a calendar perspective, and this is just how I would, long opening remarks, I know. This is what I would say is this would be the equivalent, our current calendar, of the NFL having the Super Bowl at the same time as the NFL draft, at the same time they change head coaches. In the NFL, there's specific windows and time periods designated for each of those. We're trying to do that all at the same time, and the calendar doesn't work. Knowing that, we're still operating at a very high level, and I'm really encouraged and optimistic and confident with what we accomplished. And so glad to take questions. That was a world record, wasn't it, in terms of 8.5? Was it 7 before, or is it? Yeah, I feel we'll start the year with a year with a new record. That's great. Yeah, but we'll just say USU football record for this head coach. We'll put it in that context.
Hey, Coach, good to see you again.
Thanks.
Eric Franson with 106.9
Yep.
The Fan. In this recruiting class, when you mix let's talk specifically about the players out of the portal. Comment on the difference between players coming to your team who have we'll call it justifiable experience, versus those that are seeking experience.
Yeah. Love the question. And we actually were in our succession plan and our depth, we were looking for both. And to be blunt and honest, there's different price points for those. And so demonstrated experience. Wow, is that valuable? Especially with immediate needs and roster holes, because there's usually a faster return on investment to move your program forward. That usually costs more. Players that are seeking opportunity, the desperation and gratitude that they're operating within is so much fun to deal with. And then it also gives you a tiering. That doesn't mean they could not be the starter, but it gives you a tiering within each position as to what might create healthy depth, right? And so you'll see within this, our signing It's not my favorite to have players just come for one season. That's not my favorite, but let's just frame this openly and honestly. Every player in college football basically is on a 1-year contract currently. And so at one point it was, yeah, they just have one season. My answer to that now, as the landscape keeps changing, is every player has one season. And then each coach is looking to re-sign their own roster, which that was never really a thing. But now you do that first. And so that's the same question you asked me applies to our current team. Players returning with demonstrated experience and asking them to come back, and players that want experience and trying to encourage them to come back. So that's internal as well as external. And we're trying to find the right balance. And if possible, have each position reflect that. Hasn't worked perfectly. Ultimately, capable players that can play the position and competition really helps. And sometimes, well, currently, as we're looking to continue to build the program, some are a little bit more top heavy than what we'd like. Others we've staged a little bit more effectively.
Coach Mendenhall, you bring in a Harrison Taggart, who was one tackle off the team lead to 11-win BYU team a couple of years ago. You bring in Chapman Lewis from Texas Tech, who had 3 interceptions, one of their top defensive performers. So how gratifying has it been to get a couple of proven commodities from Power 5 programs?
Each player has their own story, and in this case, both Harrison and Chap have different stories, but have arrived at a place at a time that fits their need and fits our need, which is great. And that becomes a partnership. And yeah, demonstrated experience is one thing, demonstrated production is another. And so number of starts and number of plays, man, does that help? But production values within that really helps. And so in both cases, as you mentioned in Harrison's case, man, what a unique journey he's been on, from Oregon to BYU, then to Cal, and now to Utah State. And what a great addition in terms of willingness and embracing the culture and fitting. So I think he feels really lucky and grateful to be here at this time and have this opportunity. And for us, the same, adding a player that has experience and production. In Chapman's case, really interesting for him. He was a starter at Texas Tech, not this past year, but the year before, and played very well. Then an injury this year, leading to redshirt and Texas Tech. And I know their coach very well. He actually spoke at our clinics, our coaching clinic at BYU one year as a high school coach. And our best practice there was to bring the best high school coaches from the country in to speak to Utah high school coaches at our clinic. And so I called him and talked to him about Chap, and they really wanted him to stay. And that's always a strong endorsement, especially from another head coach that I know and trust. And this was a great opportunity for him. So to have had a year of starting in the Big 12 and now see this staff, this opportunity is something that would be a great fit for him and for us. Those are just 2 examples of unique stories that ended up with really strong additions to our team.
Coach Jason Walker with Catch for today. I want to ask about a couple positions about the quarterback position, but like one story in particular, McKay Hilstead, where he was here at Utah State, went down to BYU. I know you weren't here when he was here at Utah State, but what was like recruiting him back here?
It was great. So mutual interest, again, relatively early on. And again, I'm not the coach that acts on mutual interest through third parties and all of that. I'm coaching the season, and he was competing to be the quarterback at BYU. But I made a mental note at that point, that would be a good fit at Utah State. I love having our quarterback come from our state. I think that reflects the intent of what we fill our roster with. I think it reflects the value we place on that, but also to have that player. And so, wow, what a capable leader I've already seen. And then athletic and fast, and he throws the ball well. And it's just a natural partnership as I see it. And I think he's craving and dying for the chance to be able to be the starting quarterback and have that experience and to lead a team and to learn and grow and become and demonstrate what he's truly capable of. So we saw it as a first-year player, right? And that's what a cool experience that was to watch. And man, I was captivated by the potential now for the chance as a more seasoned version to lead a team and to be able to battle for that spot. I think he's a great fit. And when you match him with Robert and I, our offensive coordinator, and you start thinking about Taysom Hill, you start thinking about Bryce Perkins, and then really Jason Beck learned that system that he's running under Robert. And you think about Devin Dampier. So you think about the possibilities of what that might look like. That becomes pretty exciting for not only McKay, but for us.
And just kind of with that quarterback battle, I mean, you got 4 other guys, Grady, and then 2 freshmen, also Anthony Garcia. Do you see Anthony Garcia factoring into the quarterback battle along with those other guys?
So I don't see Anthony Garcia. I'll start in reverse order, affecting the quarterback battle. I see him becoming more skilled at being trained year round as his predominant position being wide receiver. But we also know he can throw it. We know he can run it. By the way, he can punt. So that takes on a different weapon-ish. We chose not to do that a year ago. However, and could he line up a quarterback? Oh, yeah. But in terms of the quarterback battle separately, no. In terms of every other way possible to touch the ball or kick it, I don't know if he can kick field goals yet. Maybe we'll find that out, but yes. And in relation to, even though we were talking about McKay, really like Grady, our quarterback from Virginia, and it's been so impressive in leadership and size and physicality and speed in addition. And then our high school players, both those young quarterbacks. Put it this way, our offensive coordinator, again, Robert, he's almost giddy, and that's not characteristic for Robert. As to he goes, and I heard him over talking to a colleague, and he says, "You can't believe the quarterback situation I walked into." And he's smiling and talking in a really positive way. So we really like where we are quarterback wise right now.
Coach Mark Greenwood, Utah Statesman. Just looking at kind of like you mentioned the gaps in the roster maybe from a year ago. One of those frequently was the offensive line. You bring in 5 offensive line transfers. Just how do you feel that these 5 kind of fit that hole that maybe you had?
Yeah, the simple principle that we operate under in our program this time of year is we call it greater than, not equal to. And there's a symbol, that mathematical symbol that shows the greater than, and we have a line through that, and then equal after that. And it's one of the principles of our program. And so the way I frame that, which will answer your question, for our current team, right, they're expected, and coaching staff, myself included, we're expected to be greater than, not equal to, last year's version of us. That then allows us to keep moving forward and possibly in the same position we had. What I've told our team, as well as coaches, is then we're going to look in with any vacancy, we're going to look to bring in greater than, not equal to, what we just lost, as well as greater than, not equal to, what we currently have. And so the friction point, and the team and staff knows, right, their quest is to become greater than, not equal to, and that allows them to not be replaced by someone coming in. But the way to move a program forward is to keep bringing in people that are more skilled, qualified, and better than what we currently have. And so it doesn't discount what we have, because they're racing to make sure they stay ahead. But the intent is, to your question with the offensive front, just as one position, yeah, we're looking to bring in, with no disrespect to anyone that we just lost, but we're looking in to bring better than what we just had, not only by the qualities of each player, but by the number. And so that's a high number. And there possibly still could be another addition. And that reflects not only the need, but the emphasis. And I think both those clearly state in relation to your question that we see a need and an emphasis there.
Then kind of talking about the experience, seeking experience, and then you talked about different price points. I don't know if you meant that literally, but
I did.
Wow, good, because my question is going to be about that. Jared Calhoun has talked a little bit about kind of having some difficulties in the revenue sharing dollars from the university and not getting any. Just what were the difficulties that you saw this go around in the portal of trying to compete financially for these players that are seeking compensation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I felt very well supported. The growth of the program from year 1 to year 2, maybe I could just frame it this way. From a year ago, when I chose to try to stay out of the portal as much as possible, or use an atypical model, that'd be a better answer. An atypical model my first 2 years back, after stepping away at Virginia, that really I didn't see anyone else using, and I was great with that. In year 3, that model clearly was not going to hold, meaning that almost anyone that was coming out of the portal was seeking guaranteed money, right? And that then allowed you to be competitive. to your question, the portal opened at basically what I would consider 3 times that of true market value. So here's the season ending and existing market values of a current roster. And those are pretty well tracked and documented. And I had access to all that. The portal opened basically at 3 times the existing amount of fair market value. So that then put stress on an institution to support that or not, or the coach then within whatever existing funds to spread that over your entire roster, or then be specific by position and by need where to invest your dollars, which I never thought I'd be talking about this on signing day with it being a financial discussion, but it is exactly that. And is quite frankly, it's professional sport. So if we're not saying that, that needs to be said out loud. This is pay for play. That is what's happening. So the revenue share to me has not been an issue. And I felt supported enough and for our institution to adjust in real time once we saw what the market was to address the needs. My job is to be intentional, specific, and make sure that we're accurate with not only our evaluations, but also to do it in a manner that's fiscally responsible. And that's what the head coach's job is. And so I'm learning that part of it. And it's a completely different landscape. But to this point, I think Utah State has really done a nice job helping our football program in year 2 address what the market is. Where it goes from here, I'm not sure anyone knows. I really don't know. But it was a significant jump from last year to this year in a way that I think many anticipated, but the level in which it jumped is, I don't think it's sustainable. And we'll see where that goes. There'll be a tipping point at some near future point, I think.
In previous years, Utah State's had a lot of players out of junior college. I think you did last year. This year, I don't think any of them were from junior colleges. What was your kind of assessment of you guys from JUCO, FCS, Division II versus also Group 6, Power 5?
Yeah, just as I've arrived at Utah State, and again, I have super high standards, and I'm looking for the best predictors possible. And so, just in assessing junior college players, in my last 2 years between New Mexico and Utah State, and then weighing them against what I thought we were getting, either through FCS, other levels of Division 1, 2 football. I made a clear choice this year where I thought the predictive model was higher for players coming into our program, not only in performance, but fit from 4-year schools rather than 2-year schools. And so that was an intentional choice. That doesn't mean you won't see us take a junior college player, but when possible, we're emphasizing the other first. And so that's reflected with how we chose to sign. And I think, again, that's just based on our own study of our own team and the yield and performance, as well as all areas in our program that fit. Personally and intentionally, I think that was a better predictor for us.
Coach Mendenhall, you brought in a couple of defensive guys who played for Nick Howell when he was there at Vanderbilt. So I was just curious, what kind of feedback did you get from Coach Howell on those guys?
Yeah, we work really hard to never be more than one step removed, is what we call it, from a player or a coaching recommendation. And so, for instance, if we were talking about this room, if I was recruiting player X and I know someone personally that was on that staff, wow, that endorsement matters to us, and we think it mitigates risk. If it went, here's this player, and I don't know you, but I know Doug who knows you, right? That starts to be not quite as strong a predictor. So in this case, having someone on my staff that's been on my staff for over 22 years, or our relationship is over 22 years, that actually has coached those players, it doesn't get better than that in terms of what we know we're getting. And for them, similarly, even though I wasn't the head coach of that program, I know Clark Lee very well, and the coordinators, as you know, significantly influence the type of an experience a player has. So those 2 players, having already played for Nick Howell in the same context, meaning coordinator to player, they know now most likely what they're getting, not from the entire program, but from that relationship. And when you don't have much time and you don't have much eligibility remaining, and you're looking for the surest thing possible and the best possible fit, because let's face it, they can't miss the players, but we can't either. And so for both parties, that worked out really well. So Nick endorsed them strongly to me. I watched the film on my own, approved them on my own. And then when the players came, obviously I meet with them one-on-one and basically validated the referral that Nick gave. And so they had my endorsement.
Coach, what does your spring schedule look like? Last year, you put a lid on spring activities for the public. There's not that second window now. So but there's been a lot of talk from other coaches about doing OTA type style and not a real spring scrimmage. Like what are you looking at as you approach your spring practices?
It's still a work in progress, but it will be more of a traditional spring, not nearly as much tailored to the OTA style. I think when the calendar warrants that, then possibly you'll see a shift for me toward that. I don't think the calendar currently warrants that. And so you'll see more traditional, what a traditional spring would look like. Each Saturday, there'll be some kind of emphasis, and it might be alumni, right? It might be on campus and professors and those that are working in some support area. The spring, I won't call it a spring game because I don't intend for it to be truly a spring game, but spring showcase where there still will be a scrimmage, and I see that being open with other activities around that for the community. So it won't be the buttoned up version. Again, the primary motive from that a year ago was protection of our roster. So now more community engagement, more access, but with pretty specific intents, especially each Saturday as to who's invited and for what type of connection, to make sure we cover and throw the cast as broad a net as possible with some type of spring showcase, spring game-ish format to finish, with that being kind of a culmination of community engagement, where I would see things for young people, I would see things for older people, I would see the practice, I would see things possibly after, maybe an entire afternoon of events that would go with the game, something like that. Again, we're still in the planning stages, but certainly different than a year ago.
Coach, you brought in a couple of fullbacks from the transfer portal. What does that say about your desire to be more physical in the run game and your belief that you can be?
Yeah, just that. The position actually, and I didn't, it's not Doug's fault, but we're actually not calling it a fullback. We're calling them rhinos, like the kind that, yeah. And there's different ways that we use that position. It's not new to Coach and I's and Robert or I's relationship. And so we love inline tight ends, traditional tight ends. We love flex tight end body types, but we also like fullback-ish, tight end-ish. And we didn't know really what to call a half fullback, half tight end. So we kind of went to just the safari world. I don't remember the full story. We might have been watching the Discovery Channel or something. And we said, oh, that's what we want. We want those guys. And they kind of knock people out of the way and whatever. So yeah, there'll be an element of that in our offense that I really like. And both of those guys' stories, if you kind of dig into where they're coming from, one's a converted nose tackle, has never played the position, and another kind of did that same role at where he was. And so both really cool stories.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
I want to ask you, you've mentioned Robert and I a couple of times now. Just obviously you've worked with him for a long time, but what was that process like bringing him back in now and kind of getting a new offensive coordinator on the fly there?
Yeah, unexpected for sure. But I'm learning at college football, and especially at Utah State, and maybe throughout all of college football, besides players that are transitioning, wow, the number of changes that happen in the coaching world now. And really appreciate Kevin McGivern and the job he did, and just was thrilled, and so had a great experience working with him. Neither he nor I expected nor saw a move to Utah coming. But with that, much like in the portal, 15 years Robert and I have been together. That's a long sample size, and almost every win and every loss we've kind of shared. And that's been a very effective time period together. I think he and I, that combination, add stability, add identity, add a known, and a way to, without really missing a beat, continue to compound the successes and progress being made in year one into year two without saying maybe it's a restart. And so trust is established and has been for a long time.
Coach, it says here 29 of the 36 signees are currently enrolled for spring semester. Just what is the plan for those other signees, and are they here working out with the program, or kind of what's their status?
Yeah, so 4 of those are high school players. So if you take those off, that takes it down to 32. 2 were admitted and went through the clearance process today, and so that would take us to 31. One still needs an associate's degree, and that will allow him to come for the second 7 weeks. So really every player that's transferring will be here prior to spring practice. Again, 2 others were added today, so they'll be here. Well, they already are here, but they'll be allowed to work out and be integrated fully. And huge advantage for them to acclimate and become part of our program, but also huge advantage for us in seeing what our team really looks like. Again, the ones that aren't here are the high school players, and that's besides the handful that I've held kind of in the hole based on after spring, but the rest will be just high school guys showing up.
I actually want to ask your perspective on kind of the situation at Utah, Kyle Whittingham and him leaving. Just obviously you and him obviously had a history of facing each other. Just what was your thoughts on him leaving, then going to Michigan and kind of his career at Utah?
Yeah, I don't really have any specific thoughts regarding Kyle. I think the move is college football, and I would maybe go a step further and just say in the leadership role, if you think about Michigan for a second, I think I'd like to start there. If you think about Michigan for a second, right? Leaders, there's an expectation and there's a visibility to not only lead well and be successful on the field, but also in every area of life. And so coaches that have demonstrated success on the field, but also run programs that have not been in the headlines for other issues, right? There's a value and there's a commodity there that it fits at different times and different places. And so I think with the increasing visibility and the increasing expectations and the increasing pressure to win and win right away, right? Leaders have to acknowledge and act accordingly as well, to be the model and the example for young people. And so, right, as universities go in the portal to get a new coach, right? Coaches are going in the portal to get players, but there is a set of values that has to be exemplified. No, it doesn't have to be, but I think values should be the component of that whole thing. That's reflective of an institution. And I think, man, an institution ought to be really careful about who they select as their head coach in today's world and what that scrutiny looks like, what example, but what lessons can be taught to the players. And that really, I think, reflects a brand, an entire school, an entire region. And so I think to your question, how the hire of Utah's coach to Michigan and replacement of Utah's coach and that succession planning is reflective of the volatile landscape probably more than ever right now. And I think the broader perspective is what created the move.
Coach, I just have one more question about scheduling. You're shepherding the team into the Pac-12 now. The Pac-12 hasn't announced yet how they're going to handle the conference schedule. There's various different ideas. Do you have a preference in that? And just how would you hope to fill out your 2026 football schedule?
Yeah, I have a very simple scheduling model, and it's I think it holds regardless, and that would be my preference always would be 4 non-conference games and be in a conference that doesn't require you to have more than 4 non-conference games. So it starts with that premise, and then within those 4 non-conference, I have a very specific idea of what and who I'd like to play, meaning by tier, and so possibly 1 bye game per year. Bye meanings receive finances for play rather than 2. So it would start with something like that. I love playing in FCS. So anyway, that would be 2 of the criteria. So I have a criteria for each of those 4, and that model is reverse engineered for the outcomes that I know our team can accomplish and to keep us consistent, playing postseason, winning postseason, and continuing to build the program. Now if there's a 5th game, I'd love that to be, now I wouldn't like it to be consistent, but I think each institution ought to find the 5th game. And if that's required on any given year, I'd love a conference to not require us to play any more than 4 non-conference. I'd be okay if there's just 3, if a conference added another school. And having said that, right, then I would move more toward not having a conference championship game. I'm for an expanded playoff. I'm for starting the season earlier. I'm not for 2 byes. I'm for 1 and having the whole thing end by January 1st. And so that whole thing is more than you ask me, but it does kind of fit together. All right. So lastly, as always, this is Evan's favorite part, but Evan Butts, our director of player personnel, has been behind the scenes of the whole thing. And there's probably more specifics that you could ask, or if you're looking for given details on any specific player, besides the stories in their recruitment, I thought it'd be really good just for Evan to be available when I step away, and you guys can ask away at whatever you'd like. Good to see you all. Thank you. Okay. Yep. You bet.
This is Jason Walker with Cash Play Daily. Just want to ask about one of the fullbacks, or I guess Rhino as they're being called, Colin Remanowski. I don't know if I said that right. Kind of interesting play. Like when he was recruited, like he's listed as fullback, but he's 6'1", 260 pounds, football player. Just like, what do you kind of see from him as far as his ability to fit into an offense?
Yeah, really excited about Colin being here. Like you said, playing that Rhino position for us. I mean, when you turn on his tape, the aggression and physicality really stand out, right? So when identifying that Rhino fullback hybrid position, we are looking for somebody who is going to be fearless, taking on blocks, whether that's an inline tight end or as a fullback player. So yeah, he's trying to hurt people, and I think working with Coach and I. And kind of crafting the plan for the Rhino position, we were looking for guys like Colin, guys like Tyler, who, have displayed that, whether it's, in Colin's case, he is a physical offensive player, or Tyler's case, playing defense, causing havoc, showing aggression on that side of the ball.
Kind of with that, I wonder if there's an emphasis on maybe being able to have kind of power running football, because you convert a defensive lineman to a fullback or Rhino. You have a 260-pound, guy you're adding there. You add a 205-pound, running back, a 220-pound quarterback. Like, it seems like there's a lot of guys are adding in looking for a lot of physicality in that run game.
That is an emphasis for sure. Want to be more physical, especially with the Rhino position, running the football, but even the offensive line too. Tight ends, receivers that can block. Like that was a huge emphasis offensively, is to bring in guys with that mindset that align with us in terms of physicality and wanting the block, craving that, and moving the ball on the ground. So
Mark Greenwood with Utah Statesman. Just wanted to ask again about McKay Hilstead. We asked Coach Mendenhall about him, but he was obviously here a couple years ago, leaves, comes back. When he announced he was coming back, there was some, I'll say, mixed sentiments, not even necessarily reflective of McKay, but just how that year went and things. What was kind of the discourse with him about, coming back, and what did you see in him that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, I know there was definitely some kind of discourse about that, but, for us, we weren't here when Utah State originally, recruited him out of high school, and he came here, and then when he left, we weren't part of that staff. We were kind of just coming in with a fresh lens, fresh perspective, and just trying to bring the right people and the right players that want to be here, not just with the staff, but want to be here at Utah State. And I know Coach talked about it, but kind of going through the process of vetting and evaluating, McKay is that type of person. He aligns with this program and this staff and what we're trying to build, and we're fired up that he's here. So I know he was here previously and left, but he's back home, and we're fired up that he's here with us.
Kind of along with Jason's question, just he is one of the smaller guys that you'll see play quarterback, only 5'10", 195. Just how does that factor into that same kind of physicality that you were looking for, being a little undersized?
Yeah, absolutely. He shows running ability, which obviously is very important for us at the quarterback position. And he is not afraid to be physical, but there definitely is an effort to surround him with pieces to protect him, right? Bringing in offensive linemen, rhinos that show physicality and fearlessness to block and protect our, not just McKay, but other skill position players. So yeah, I think that's definitely an area this offseason where, okay, we bring in McKay. We need to make sure we identify players who can come in with our existing group that's coming back to again, like I said, not just help him and protect him, but other players around him. And I feel great about the guys that we're bringing in to do that.
Evan, you're bringing in Antonio Blewett, who is an All-American at North Dakota, one of the highest ranked cornerbacks at the FCS level. Asher Cunningham had a tremendous season at Elon. How confident are you that these guys' abilities will transfer over to FCS and as well as some of the other FCS guys and even Division II guys that you brought in?
Yeah, no, we're super confident. Obviously confident that they're here, right? Kind of as we've gone on and our staff discussions, Coach Mendenhall, one thing that's kind of worked for other programs, I think most notably, you look at Indiana, right? They're kind of saying is production over potential, and you look at the guys that we've have brought in, they have displayed that whether it's at the FBS level, like you mentioned with guys like Chapman Lewis or guys like Asher. These are guys that have played, they have experience, starting experience, and have produced at that level. And I think there is something to that, getting guys in, who have played. They've displayed that, and we are confident in not just their ability, but their mindset, their character, that coming in here to Utah State, joining the Pac-12, they'll be playmakers for us.
How much of a challenge has it been in this recruiting process where there seems to be more of an emphasis on what you just said, performance over potential, and how that affects what you're trying to do with high school recruiting?
Yeah.
It seems like what Indiana did was they showed, we want experienced, bigger bodies, mature bodies. That's going to get us to where we want to go. Certainly that's got to affect the ability to do high school recruiting to some degree. How has that kind of changed with these last few years?
Yeah, I think with the transfer portal, there's definitely been an emphasis on, bringing in guys who can play right away, produce right away, because in this sort of landscape, it's a results-oriented business, and you got to have results, right? But with that being said, we, Coach Mendenhall, our staff, our program, we want to be a developmental high school-based program. As we build this thing out, there's going to be some I don't want to say growing pains, but an element of getting in more mature bodies, guys who have played right away, just so we can really kickstart this thing and get it going in the direction that we want it to head. So at first, you're going to see, these portal numbers, 32 during this kind of last month. But the ideal and the hope is that as we continue to go, it's going to be more high school focused. So,
and then position wise, Coach said Anthony Garcia is going to stay at the wide receiver position, but he pretty much embodies all of the performance coming back for the roster. So there has been an emphasis on getting some wide receivers into that room. Could you comment on what that process was like and what Utah State's getting from these wide receivers?
Yeah, really, really excited about the additions that we have coming in. You look at, and I'll kind of just preface this. You look at kind of last year what we did, and again, every year is a new year. Everyone's different, but the pieces we brought in with BP, Brendan Pagan, Brady Boyd, AG. Those guys coming in, maybe they weren't the most known commodities once they got here, but they just the right people that produced, right? Similar kind of deal with some of these guys, but I do think, you look at a guy like Eli Wood. I mean, that guy is catching the game-tying touchdown pass in the ACC championship game. He's, you know, racking up catches, making guys miss in the Gator Bowl against SEC competition. Like we are adding some guys who have proven on the biggest of stages that they can play big time football, right? Guy like Rex Haynes coming from Arizona, man. I mean, you just watch him in workouts. He is really impressive. And then LJ as well, coming from Texas Tech and I guess most recently Texas State, just brings an element, speed, right? Speed, dynamic ability, playmaking ability. And then another guy, Javon Robinson. I mean, another guy who has produced at the FBS level. So, yeah, you just kind of look at that group of portal receivers. We're really excited, really hopeful, believe in those guys, and those guys will have a chance to make some big plays for us this year.
I'll pass this on, but I have just one more question about another position group. Generally speaking, it seemed like there was a real emphasis to add a lot of guys on that edge rusher, outside linebacker type position. This seemed like through the course of this, more and more players kept getting added to that position. You just speak to that position and its importance and what Coach Mendenhall wants to accomplish with his defense.
Yeah, I think just with, attrition, whether it's graduation, portal, again, kind of to my point earlier, just as we get this thing going, and kind of go throughout here, getting just bigger, stronger at this point, athletic body types that, like you said, kind of can create pressure, get after the quarterback, maybe drop in space a little bit too. That was really important for us. So, and again, football is a physical, violent sport. Not just getting one or two guys, but being able to create some depth at that position because of how vital it is, getting after the quarterback, creating pressure. If you could do that, that kind of just alleviates the whole defense, honestly. Corners, safeties don't have to cover as long. It just helps the defense. So that was definitely an emphasis in getting guys out of the portal, again, who have proven that they can play at this level. So,
want to ask about which of the players you've brought, and even some of the guys on the roster that you brought in, with the expectation that they'll play offensive tackle, is that's a position where you've got a lot of snaps to replace, whereas the interior line, you've got at least some returners.
Yeah, I think you look at really all the portal guys on that list. I think we envision those guys competing for tackle reps. Guy like Caden Lynch, who's got over 2,000 snaps career at William & Mary. He primarily played guard, but I wouldn't be surprised if we give him a shot at tackle as well. The best five, are going to play. We feel really good about the interior part of our O-line with the guys coming back and growing and getting better this upcoming year. But yeah, I see all four of those guys getting a shot, getting a crack at the tackle spots for sure.